Good afternoon. Welcome to All About Animals. I am Sherry Graditor, and I have wonderful guests here and a bunch of little guests as well. We are on the grounds of the College of Lake County. We are at their apiary, which is new, which was put in for a bunch of reasons as an educational tool. And it has lots of uses, and we're going to discuss them. So let me start by introducing some of the people who are standing around me. You're looking at Rory Klick here. Rory?
Hi, I'm the Associate Professor and Department Chair for the Horticulture and Sustainable Agriculture Program.
Okay, we've done that. Wait, we need, you got yours. Pass it around. Introduce yourself.
My name's Ed Popelka. I'm a resident beekeeper and a maintenance engineer.
My name is Bernard Kondenar. I'm a student here in the Sustainable Agriculture Program. I also serve as a student trustee.
And I understand this whole thing was your idea, yes?
Not all my idea, but
significantly.
I helped a little bit.
Significantly.
I'm Caron Wenzel, and I'm an adjunct, and I teach permaculture.
Okay, and permaculture is what?
Permanent agriculture, and it's like a keystone of sustainability and the new organic farming.
Beautiful. Okay, so now we're looking at a whole bunch of different kinds of hives.
We have a long-standing horticulture program. We added sustainable agriculture in 2012, and we're really looking for ways to keep it practical and hands-on and very experiential. So we had a few beehives tucked away around the arboretum and the farm, and this was our opportunity to expand that and really create a classroom setting with a variety of hives where people could see there's different ways to keep bees, different ways to support them, and where we could integrate some of the beekeeping activities into our courses.
Okay, and I'm going to ask this, and whoever wants to pick up on it is welcome. Why do we need bees? What's so important about the bees?
Oh, that's an Eddie question.
Why do we need bees?
Yes.
Well, it all started with me for my allergies, to treat my allergies, but they are amazing pollinators. The service alone that they just do for pollination is beyond our belief. I mean, I think if they were to disappear, the trickle effect would be great. So yes, just to pollinate our flowers and our trees, and of course they also treat us to their delicious honey and their pollen and their propolis, their royal jelly, the wax, making things out of wax.
And I understand that if we didn't have bees to pollinate, a lot of food would disappear from our tables.
That is absolutely correct. Probably half of it. They say a third to half, but it probably is even more than that. And they're beautiful to watch. I really enjoy just standing by the hives and watching them. They're absolutely fascinating.
Okay, and next, which is one of the things that we were discussing was the fact that the bee population has been dropping frighteningly, and that there are causes of that. And who's going to talk to the fact that part of the research here has to do with finding out why and maybe coming up with solutions?
Well, I think that's probably the question that I hear the most. And the way that I'm thinking about that is that I think maybe we think into a linear fashion where if this, then what? If that, then this. Well, with bees, it doesn't really work that way from my understanding. It works more like nature does, like a complex web instead of a chain like so many of us were taught, food chains. There's no food chain. It comes from several different directions. And that's one of the things we're doing here is trying to figure out what in the environment specifically, or what kind of treatments that are more natural or they may encounter. For instance, with our log hive, we want to see how they'll react if they're in a spot more like their natural home. We're growing Stropharia mushrooms, which is part of a larger study out of the University of Washington, that there's an exudate from the mushroom that is actually antimicrobial, antibacterial, and antiviral that helps knock down that viral load. So that mushroom is something that occurs naturally in the environment. Hollow logs are something that occurs naturally in the environment. We're observing what those, kind of taking our hands out of it and seeing how that might affect them. And that's a big part of the research.
And does that give you, or is there a potential that will give you some kind of an idea? Because I understand the bee population has dropped radically.
Absolutely. The reported percentages are up above 50%.
That are gone?
Yeah, just collapse and die in a wholesale type fashion. It's not a slow progression in most cases. A lot of times it's a total collapse.
One of my friends who is a beekeeper told me that he has 6 hives and he lost 3 of them completely last year.
That sounds pretty normal.
Yeah. And he was devastated.
It sounds pretty normal.
I'll chime in that I think we have to keep in mind some of the classic reasons why we're seeing loss of a certain species. Habitat loss is a very real thing. As we have more of our acreage into subdivisions and commercial centers, we lose that habitat. But even within farmsteads that are still existing, there used to be hedgerows in between fields and pastures, and now they farm lot line to lot line with much larger scale, and so they've eliminated a lot of those hedgerows where there used to be flowers for the bees. As we sanitize our residential yards, and I'm going to use that word by choice, and make a monoculture of turfgrass supports nothing. It's all the other flowering plants that were part of what the bees needed, and those things are disappearing. So we're kind of homogenizing our landscape and losing a lot of the diversity. So that's habitat loss for the bees. So that's a big issue. And then there's outside factors, varroa mites and some diseases and pathogens that are on the increase. Are they on the increase because of climate change? Are they on the increase because we're a more global culture now and things are moving from country to country? We're not sure. And we don't know what those thresholds are. But one of the things we want to do to support that understanding is monitor and survey for how many mites are we seeing? What kinds of controls do the bees respond to? And how can we help support the vigor of the hive so that people aren't losing those hives each year?
The other thing we spoke of the fact that the bees that you find here are either Russian bees or Italian bees, but that those bees are bred in the United States, and there's a reason for that. You guys have it. I'm not doing it. What's the reason?
So we want to make sure that we're not bringing in any diseases or pathogens from other countries here. So while they may be Italian bees or Russian bees in their ancestry,
Do they buzz with an accent?
no,
Okay.
they're American bees now.
Okay.
But they bring that genetic hardiness of their ancestry. So we've been trying those Russian bees to see if they're a little more winter resistant. I guess, that kind of makes sense when you think of Russia's climate.
They are comfortable with the plantings that we have. Well, they've been born here, so they've been.
And we have a lot of European plants that are introduced into our landscape as well. And bees are pretty adaptable. I mean, a pollen source and a nectar source is a pollen source and a nectar source. And so diversity is the key. Lots of different kinds of those things and lots of different bloom periods so that we have good habitat for them.
Diversity with succession.
Yes. And from what I understand, lots of communities now are beginning to permit the keeping of bees.
Yeah.
But even Chicago, there are places in Chicago where the houses are this close together.
25-foot wide lots.
25-foot lots, and they've got beehives.
So I worked for the city of Chicago and the Chicago Botanic Garden for many years in the urban greening movement, and it was great to be part of those advocates for urban agriculture that pushed for those ordinances to be changed. And then here in Lake County, we worked for several years on an ordinance that was passed just a couple years back that allows backyard bees, backyard chickens, backyard hoop houses, even for smaller lots that are less than an acre.
Wait, what was the third one? Backyard what's?
Hoop houses, a season extension structure so people can extend the season for food production.
Okay.
Yeah, not greenhouses that are heated, but hoop houses.
But hoop houses
that just,
where that's the hoops with the plastic over them.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was a really interesting debate. People's misconception about having backyard bees or backyard chickens, and we did some interesting videos to educate our county board, and I'm really delighted that we moved that forward.
Can we stop and take a minute and talk about the difference between bees and wasps and the aggression of the bees and the aggression of the wasps?
Bees and wasps, that's a good one. People are always calling me, wanting me to come remove the bees from their house that got into the house or wherever they may be, into the stoop. And most of the time they're wasps. Bees are generally very gentle by nature. They're just out foraging nectar in nature. They don't want to sting you. They don't want to bother you. Maybe if you're messing with their home, they might change their mind and decide to do that, but out in nature, bees are generally very, very docile. Wasp, on the other hand, especially this time of year, the yellow jackets and the bald-faced hornets can be very aggressive. They can be very aggressive all the time, and they don't hesitate to sting you. A big reason for that is, well, a honeybee has a barbed stinger. So it's going to be very selective on whether or not it wants to sting you, because it dies after it stings you. Whereas most all wasps can sting you over and over and over again. So a honeybee is going to give you warnings. It's going to come up and buzz you. It's going to come up and knock you. Whereas the wasp will sting now, ask questions later philosophy, kind of. So wasps they'll sting you right away. They just don't care. And wasps are generally carnivorous, but wasps can be pollinators. So wasps are always even trying to get to the bees. So
Will they kill the bees?
Oh yes, they right now are probably out there chewing up little baby bees and getting into the beehives and even tackling adult bees and ripping their wings off and chewing them apart.
Ick.
Yeah, so
but then I guess that's nature. That's the balance of nature, folks.
I let them coexist. You know, they're doing that, and just learning to coexist with nature is a challenge that I think I face daily as we have yellow jackets flying in our face right now.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, so a lot of people who call me and want me to come remove these bees, I want them to either take a picture, let me know what they look like, and they're like, yeah, they're bees. Who wants to get that close to observe them, you know? So a lot of times I get there and I could kind of see, you know, that these little yellow jackets are smaller, they're yellow and black, whereas bees are mostly orange and black. Bees are hairy, bees have hair on them, whereas wasps generally don't have hairs on them.
That's a really clear way to discern. When you look at them, you can see that fuzziness, that soft, downy, we call that hirsute or pubescent quality to the body of the honeybee. On a wasp, you won't see that. So
No, the wasp is sleek, and he's sleek so that he can fly fast and bite you.
That's a good way to remember it.
Yeah. Trent, a lot of times we have this log hive, this natural log hive. It's a thing of beauty. Bees live in trees, so that's really why we decided to make this log hive right here. And they're doing amazing. It's all natural foundation that they've built within that log hive. And it's very unmanageable. Just trying to get in there and take those layers apart is an extreme challenge to get in there. We're going to probably get a little small camera on a stick and poke it in there and maybe take a peek, but that's our log hive, and well, I think it's a thing of beauty. If you turn around back to the other side here and do a 180, right over here we have our Rory hive. This Rory hive right here is a observation hive also. It has little windows for viewing purposes where you could see the natural foundation that they make in there. So it's another management type of hive. It may be a little bit more difficult to manage, but for viewing purposes and educational purposes, it's a beautiful hive. Over here to the right, what we have here is the traditional Langstroth type of hive. It's a 10-frame Langstroth hive. Removable frames, very manageable. It's a nice system actually, and if you see this one here is kind of high. We have two deep boxes, and that's where they raise their babies and their brood. Probably doing a little feeding in here. And these shallower boxes are all honey supers. That's the extra stores of honey. So we never mess with the deep boxes right here. This is an empty box for feed if we're looking in for management purposes. And these shallower ones, because honey is so heavy, just trying to lift those deep boxes with honey would probably be 80 or 90 pounds.
And do we want to mention the fact that we don't take the honey away from the bees? Isn't that what we said here?
We're not looking for honey production. That's not our purpose, actually. We're looking more for, well, we hear about this colony collapse disorder, and well, I think we're looking more for what really may be the causes of it and more natural ways to approach this colony collapse disorder. Not all the chemicals we don't want to use here. This one right here, this is a Kenyan top bar hive in climates in like Africa, in warmer climates. It's like a little manger, but it's all natural foundation. You do top bars, and they build the natural foundation down from the bars. This one here, it's brand new. Our apiary is all brand new. Next year, we're very hopeful that Caron is going to manage this top bar hive and show us how it's done, actually. It's a beautiful hive. For our climate, it's a little more of a challenge to manage bees in this climate here.
Especially when they're on your hand.
Yeah, especially, see that? And they are, actually. They love the oils and all the stuff we put in our hair and the lotions. This is another hive right here. It's a Langstroth hive. This is the one that we use for our observation hive. I could probably pull some bees out of there and we could find the queen. We're not going to do that today. It's raining. It's not an ideal day to get in here. These bees here did overwinter from last year. I brought these bees here. They're a mixed genetics of bees. The queens are VSH queens, Varroa sensitive hygienic. They're breeding queens now to smell the Varroa mites. And what they'll do is they'll open up that capped brood, they'll pull the larva out, and they'll throw it out in front of the hive because it has a Varroa mite on it. So we're trying different genetics with some of our queens. We're mixing the genetics up. The Russian queens, these VSH queens, the Carnolian queens, the hives that we have down here at the bottom down here. These are two of our new Russian bees that we installed right here. They're very similar. We're just building them up now. We got them kind of late, so we're trying to build up the honey stores. This hive right here, I knew the mite count was very, very high in this hive, and well, it ended up experiencing colony collapse disorder. So the bees just abandon the hive, you know. Do they do it all at once? A week later, are they just all gone? As they abandon the hive, all these other bees and the wasps and the yellow jackets and the bald-faced hornets all went in there, robbed everything they could out of that hive. And now there's probably even ants and other bugs. And at this point, I let them all coexist in there. The next one here, we have another top bar hive, actually. Right now, we are not managing this hive with bees, but we feed the bees. There might be comb in there, actually. There might have been a little bit of honey left in there. Sometimes I do open field feeding in there. It can attract a lot of critters, but there's some beautiful natural comb. It's a thing of beauty, actually. Just nice looking at that sometimes, and that's another thing there that I just might pour. I might pour some sugar water in that, actually. Down below here, what we have, actually, tell you what, Caron, why don't you come over here, actually, and why don't you talk just a little bit about this? Because she did this with her class. We got all the class out here, and there's a special process that we use. This is a treatment for the bees in here is what this is. And talk a little bit about this.
Oh, okay. What we did was, being a part of permaculture, there is a mycologist. His name is Paul Stamets, and he's kind of famous in certain circles. But one of the things that he discovered by observation, accidentally, he lives in the Olympic Peninsula, and he sells and researches with all different kinds of mushrooms. And he noticed in his backyard that this one particular variety of mushroom really attracted his bees from his beehive. And it's Strophaia, and they're also called king mushrooms in common name. And that he discovered that they were actually pushing aside the wood chips and feeding on the nectar of the mycelium that this mushroom was creating. And what he discovered was those hives tended to survive after they had had mites and different things with colony collapse disorder, because colony collapse disorder is all over the United States right now. And what it does, apparently, and what they wanted to prove and find, is that the exudant from the mycological hyphae actually is antibiotic and antibacterial and antiviral, and that he contacted the University of Washington because he's worked on other stuff with the University of Washington, and that they have been experimenting for the last 2 years. Started in 2013, I believe, and he's still working on it, but that they discovered that they had a 75% success rate in terms of bees surviving by just having this in a bee yard to lower the viral load from mites. And mites, it's kind of interesting. Everything that will kill a bee, bacteriologically or virally, is carried by the varroa mites. And Eddie talked about before the hygienic behavior and all the different kinds of bees we have here, that the hygienic behavior is also a really important trait, because that they will literally, pick off the mites and or chew off their legs. What are the doctor?
Ankle biters.
The ankle biters, right? So we're hoping, this is what we're testing. We're hoping that between the mushrooms and the ankle biters or the Russians, that we'll get a much greater increase in bee survival as well as management.
Natural methods.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, I want to show everyone the gardens, and we've only got about 5 minutes left to tape. We are in what you call a hoop house.
Or high tunnel. So these are season extension structures that don't have heat added, but through passive solar gain, clear plastic, it generally stays pretty comfortable in here. Even on a clear January day, it'll be, up 40, 45 degrees in here. So what this allows is we can rotate in cool season and warm season crops at different times of year and grow probably about 45 or 46 weeks out of the 52-week year,
Incredible.
even in this climate and even with no added heat.
And I noticed you've got nasturtiums over there.
Sure. So nasturtiums are a great crop for edible flowers. Plus they're just pretty and fun.
Do bees like them?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And what you see here is, raised beds where we rotate through. We're starting to rotate in cool season things here in the fall. So lettuces, spinach, onions, some of the warmer season things like the beans and the peppers are starting to wind down, but we have another rotation of carrots and radishes that are coming along. So
I saw. It's
yeah,
beautiful.
So, and this is, harvested every week, and this goes right over to our salad bar in the cafe.
Yeah.
So
It's beautiful.
Our food is very local.
Yes, it's more than beautiful though.
It is. It's practical from the perspective that this is our outdoor learning laboratory for the students, for the larger campus community to come and see how they can produce their own food and diversify their own properties. And then, of course, this is where our bees are foraging for pollen and nectar on a daily basis.
Do bees forage in the winter, or do they?
They tend to
withdraw for the
yeah,
world?
they tend to kind of hunker down for the winter, but on a warm, sunny day, you'll see them cleaning the hive and pushing out debris and bees that have passed away and getting the hive cleaned out and maybe scouting a little bit. You want to make sure that you have that long run of things providing habitat for them from as early in the spring till as late in the fall as possible.
And down over there, you have public gardens.
Yeah,
you
we
said.
have community garden
The
plots.
community garden plots are over that way.
And that's really nice because a lot of people maybe live in an apartment or a condo or simply have a shady yard. And they not only get a space to garden, but they get to hang out with other gardeners. And, it's a good group. People like to share notes on what they're growing.
But it's more than a good group. It allows people to return, forgive the expression, to their roots.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I had to do that.
Well, one of my favorite stories with our community garden is our first year. We had a little boy out there gardening with his mom, and I took a walk in the evening, and he said, "Oh, do you have a garden here?" And I played along, and I said, "Yeah." He said, "Come see ours." And so I waved to his mom, who was weeding, and he showed me. He reached down and broke off a piece of broccoli, and he said, "Watch this." And he put it in his mouth, and he said, "You can eat this stuff straight." So I thought if we get a 5-year-old to be turned on to eating broccoli straight out of the garden bed, that's priceless.
If we can get a 5-year-old to realize that broccoli comes from a garden bed and not a grocery.
Right. That's right.
That's where it starts. We've lost it. So many people have lost their connection to the world.
Sure.
And those are the people who are terrified of the bees. And
Right.
those are the people who want to get rid of the coyotes. And those are the people who are afraid of the world around them and the wildlife that inhabit it. They've lost the contact that we used to have.
Yeah, and a lot of our students here, they say, "Oh, I've always loved being outside, or I've always loved to garden. I'm so happy doing this, for my career." And the green industry is really working hard, I think, to embrace sustainability.
Finally.
And they're looking for people who are going to be that next generation of green professionals with that mindset of, we work with the bees, we work, with diversity.
And okay, so big message that we'd like to get out about this is, number one, the bees aren't going to eat you alive.
Right.
They are not the enemy.
And they're really an integral part of our habitat. The next time you eat an apple or a pear or a peach or a strawberry or an almond or a pecan or, any other number of items, thank a pollinator.
Or even the animals that eat the plants that
That's
the
right.
pollinators pollinate, because it is all connected. And our world
Absolutely.
is like that.
An integral web.
Absolutely. I think we're out of time, guys. And so I'm going to cut this short now. I do want to mention, which I did not earlier, that we won't have dogs and cats on this program probably for the next 2 shows because of construction at Save a Pet. So I'm taking the time with these to give an opportunity to people to have a little more time to talk. We will be back at Save a Pet when Save a Pet is open again. And in the meantime, enjoy this stuff, because this is the kind of stuff we want you to hear. Thank you again. I'm Sherry Graditor, and we are at CLC, and we have been so well received. Thank you, all of you.
Thanks. Come and visit.
We will. Thank you.